That's one. It's one of them all together, guys. You sign it?
No. Put the sign-in sheet there too, huh?
Here?
Okay. Then you'll turn it.
Pay attention, I'm bringing 4, relax.
Oh, he took it.
But right now, pay attention to Doc.
And then we're going to turn on the machine. It's great to see you all today again, and all the early people. We should have about 10 more coming that are maybe still under the covers. But I'm going to just...
Want the second picture now, Doc?
Well, we'll just do this one in a second. Yeah, we'll do this. Okay, by the way, okay, if you don't have any of the 4, you can get them in the back. He's handing them out. There's a funny thing, if you do your paper, Masada is a great one because it's just one place. You don't have to look 1,000 things up. But Masada is actually a mispronunciation. In Hebrew, the word is really mitzada. There's a mitzada, which means fortress. It's the Hebrew word for fortress, mitzada. But everybody doesn't pronounce the TZ, and so visitors through the years, instead of saying mitzada, would say masada. And masada is the Hebrew word for restaurant. And so, restaurant.
Oh, that's why I like it.
So in their language, you know, people are saying, where's the restaurant? Masada. But it's really mitzada. But it's now spelled Masada, so what can you do? Words change. Words change. Anyway, as soon as Tommy's back, we'll look at this as the Rosetta Stone again. The Rosetta Stone, remember, was found in northern Egypt in Rosetta. The area is called Rosetta. It's not a red stone. By the way, you can go this close to it in the British Museum. I mean, you used to be able to touch it, but some American, of course, at the place, at one of the, shall we say, the archaeological places, you know, spray painted his initials on something, so they're so afraid now that now they have a glass around it, so you can't spray paint it. But you used to be able to touch it. No, it's about this size. This is about the actual size of the Rosetta Stone found in Rosetta, Egypt. Okay, the next we'll just go through. For Egypt, we'll go through fast. Here's the Behistun Rock. But you see so much writing in 3 different Persian languages and in the Babylonian language. And it's the king, one of the Persian kings, with, they like to show pictures of captives with their hands tied behind them. And you notice they all had these big beards. And they cut the cliff so nobody could touch it. This is way high, about 300 feet high. It's really high. So this is the Behistun Rock. Remember the Behistun Rock? And this is the one that opened the Babylonian language. Before this, nobody could read the Babylonian language in the whole world. No one could read it. And this opened it up by Rawlinson, 1856, and the Rosetta Stone opened up the Egyptian writing. And again, I've said it, but I can't say it enough. In Egypt, there are thousands of statues. Not an exaggeration, not hundreds. Thousands. Everywhere you go in Egypt, you see a statue of the pharaoh and writing below it. And by the way, it's very interesting. When the pharaohs are young, you'll see a statue, him beside his mother usually. And they're about the same height. But most of them, like Ramses and his wife. And they're usually a little behind his shoulder. And actually, you'll see the mother he usually has a whip in one hand, and the mother is holding the whip hand back. She has her hand in front of it, meaning she's tempering any punishment or evil in him. She's holding his whip hand back, and then he has a shepherd crook in the other hand, and she's pushing that hand forward. Now, when the pharaohs generally, this is their general habit. I'm not, please don't email me, was I sponsoring this or anything. When the pharaohs are older, usually we see Pharaoh's big sitting in the chair, and mother and wifey are at his ankles. They're little. Big Pharaoh statues, little mother and little wife. They're about ankle high on him. And again, we're sorry for that, but that's the way they do it. That's the way they do it. Okay, next. Here, okay, could we have a map? If we had 1,000 hours, we'd go over and fill that in, but if you want to, you can, but you just have it. But notice, remember the water is flowing upwards? Maybe, I don't know, maybe
you want it off?
Without the light for a minute.
Okay.
And as we go here, though, here's Cairo. Cairo is the big city. Cairo is the second largest. It was always the largest city in Africa, but now Cairo is second to Lagos. And like you might say, who ever heard of that? But that's now the biggest city in Africa on the eastern coast. And just more people. Cairo has about 12 million people. Easy to get lost in there. And remember, here's Goshen, where the Hebrews settled, Pithom and Ramses. Just to say, all through the Nile, here's about 650 miles, till we get to Nubia, or now it's called Sudan. But all through it, every mile, there's a temple here. A temple here, a temple here, a temple to the hawk god, a temple to Hathor, a temple to the dog god, a temple to the fly god, a temple to the crocodile god. There's hundreds of temples along the Nile, and if you can't see, feel free to move, And anybody, if you can't see, feel free to move. And there's thousands of statues. The biggest here at Giza, the pyramids are at Giza. You should know that. Giza, G-I-Z-A. Giza, the pyramid, the great pyramids. There's a lot of little pyramids, but the three great pyramids are at Giza, all built. They were built before Abraham. The Hebrews did not build the pyramids. I mean, it'd be nice if they did. It'd be a nice story, but they didn't. See, Tommy said he thought they did. See, you're learning something. I mean, I know you're smart already, but, knowledge is infinite. But around Giza, they built it. See, Memphis was the early, shall we say, capital. And north of Memphis, Saqqara, they built we see a step pyramid older than the other pyramids. In other words, where the pyramids are smoothed up, or step pyramid goes in steps. But the pyramid, the biggest one is like as tall as it's a 48-story building or something. These are really big. It's one of the 7 wonders of the world. There are 3 great pyramids, and they're at Giza. Giza is really North Memphis. And if you go to Egypt, they have what they call the sound and light show at night. And you're in front of the pyramids, and they have spotlights in color, and they have it in English, French, German, different hours, and it's really kind of eerie, and it sounds like this. Everyone fears time, but time fears the pyramids. I am Shepard, and I built in Egypt, in my language, my name is Khufu. I built the first pyramid for my death. Alexander the Great fought a battle in my shadow. Julius Caesar and the Romans fought here. Abraham saw me, and Isaac and Jacob. And it goes on. Everyone fears time, but time fears the pyramids. And really neat. Unfortunately, a Muslim imam has called that the Sphinx should be destroyed because it's a statue. And of course the Egyptians don't want that. If you go there with a hammer, expect to be in prison a couple of years. Memphis, we have Memphis, Tennessee, but Memphis was, again, the early capital, east of the pyramids, that's on the west side. There's a lake here. Here's Heliopolis. Heliopolis had a great obelisk. An obelisk is a memorial pillar. And the United States has the largest obelisk, the Washington Monument, just in the Egyptian style. There's a pyramid, not a pyramid, there's a pillar with a point. And the Heliopolis obelisk is now in the courtyard of the Vatican. You see pictures of the Vatican, and in front, that is the Roman soldiers hauled it off, and they shipped it and floated it, and they got it to Italy, and it's in the center. When you see a picture of the center of the Vatican, you see that obelisk sticking up. Well, that comes from Egypt, and it comes from Heliopolis. Notice these are the Greek names, not the Egyptian. Helio means sun. Polis is Greek for city. So we get the word populous, police, political, and then poly, see many people live in the city. So the university like Cal Poly, that's California Polytechnical Institute, Cal Poly. It sounds great, I go to Cal Poly. But poly means they have many engineering subjects, physics, chemistry, aviation engineering, water engineering. Poly means we offer a lot of things. Okay, here's Cairo, the big city, and Cairo they also call the city of mosques. They have hundreds of mosques, Muslim places. Again, I told you yesterday, there are no Egyptian people alive today. They've all been gone, like the last of the Mohicans. The Egyptians today are Arabs. The original, in the Hebrew Bible, the Old Testament, it'll call Egypt, anybody know the Hebrew name for Egypt? Oh, Bruce, of course. Bruce. If I'm kidnapped at the break, Bruce will take it. Mitzrayim, and today, Egypt has three names. It's the United Arab Republic, and it's called also Mitzrayim, and it's called Mitzer. Imagine that. And mitz is the Hebrew word for like orange juice. So if you go to Israel and you want some orange juice, you say mitz. It sounds crazy here, but it's okay there. But Mitzrayim means fruitful. Mitz, and ayim. Im in Hebrew is plural, im, but ayim is the doubles. The old languages, Babylonian Hebrew, they not only had a plural, even Greek, they had what we call a dual, and endings for two of anything. And ayim is the plural two, dual. And so mitz, fruit, ayim means two. So mitz, the country was called double fruit because it was fruitful in the north, in the delta. Mitzrayim, the double fruit. So we say we'll go to Egypt, and they say let's go to double fruit. Whatever. Anyway, there are temples all over, a lot of temples there. They have a lake here, which they call the leaf of the flower. You see how it looks? And the lake, this is one of the questions in the test, by the way. It's called Lake Fayum, F-A-I-Y-U-M. Lake Fayum. No joke, this is a question in the test. For those who have come on time. Lake Fayum, it's a big lake, and it's famous for the temples on the south end of the lake, and the temples are to worship the crocodile god. And this is what, Israel got out of when they left Egypt. And it's called Crocodipolis, Crocodile Polis City, Crocodipolis. And they worship the crocodile. And not only did they worship the crocodile, Lake Fayum is famous for the crocodile temples. So yeah, they're in heathen darkness. And of course, our prayer really is to when I was down there, I was surrounded. There was like school holiday. I remember there was like 20 young girls from junior high, and they had all different colored outfits, green and red and orange and pink, and they would all giggle at the same time. And one asked me if I spoke Arabic, you know, I didn't say a few words in Arabic. I could read a little Arabic, but, you know, and I said, well, not well. And they all looked at me like, you dope. He doesn't know Arabic. Oh, you know. And that's why, you know, witnessing to them, most of these people only know Arabic, so they know the Koran. We'll just jump back for a minute. And anyway, like fighting the crocodile. Now, this is really the northern Crocodilopolis. Down here, we have a place called Combe Ombo, down in the south. And Combe Ombo is the southern Crocodilopolis. In other words, they have a whole little town or city devoted to worship and honor the crocodile. And so around there, there's statues of crocodile. And at Combe Ombo, they used to have a crocodile decorated with gold decorations. Gold decorations on the crocodile. Did he appreciate it or anything? You know, who knows? But that's the Egypt they came out of. And when God gave the plagues, each plague also was against the Egyptian gods. We go down, just to mention, Amarna was one of the capitals of Egypt, and different pharaohs had different. You hear, sometimes this is good, Thebes, Karnak, and Luxor. You'll hear the city of Thebes. The city of Thebes is made of two halves. The northern half is called Karnak, and then it's KL in our alphabet. The southern half is called Luxor. The northern half, Karnak, the lower half, Luxor, and together they make Thebes. Follow that? Now, if you go there, I got on a plane and we came down there. It has temple after temple, giant temples, like giant auditoriums with pillars. Sometimes they're 10 foot in diameter, pillars, and often they're not holding anything up. They're just for the decoration, and they're painted in red and blue and green with what? Crocodiles. All of them have crocodiles. And they have Horus the hawk god, and the falcon god, and the sun god, and Hathor with her the god of fertility and love, and she has two horns and the sun in the middle, and you have all these gods and goddesses, plus pictures of the pharaohs, and statues everywhere. There might be, in Luxor, Karnak, remember Thebes is Karnak and Luxor, I don't know, you might have, what shall I say, 600 statues. Statues everywhere. And most people just, when you visit Egypt, you visit Giza. Gaza is a place in the Holy Land where, they're having all the arguments. Gaza and the Gaza Strip. Giza is Egypt where they have the pyramids. So this is Giza, in case anybody's saying, why does he keep saying Giza? Isn't it Gaza? No, Gaza's up here. Okay. By the way, if somebody says there's a lot of names, that's because there are a lot of names. The world is big. The Earth isn't as big as Jupiter, but it's plenty big. Anyway, across from the great temple cities, we have in this, you see this indentation? Here we have what is called the Valley of the Kings, the Valley of the Queens, and here's where the pharaohs were worried, the ones after they built the pyramids, other pharaohs just couldn't assemble, a couple 100,000 workers. And the stones the stones generally are about like this, cut, that make the pyramids. And about 6 foot deep, they weigh tons. And they built the pyramids by in the off-season, when they weren't farming, you see. It's like the men had nothing to do. So, let's build a pyramid. And so they assembled them. But later pharaohs were afraid they'd be robbed and all that. So they said, let's get buried about 400, 500 miles south And that's what they did. So they started the Valley of the Kings. It's like mountainous, and inside they dug caves, and they have the burial places in the Valley of the Kings. And then, you know, today in the United States, they usually bury a husband and wife near each other. Do you know in the military ceremony, cemeteries in the United States, it's husband and wife, one on top of the other. It's one in our military, so it's a safe room. But here they bury people, and the wealthier kings, you'd go through a tunnel. I mean a long tunnel, about a block long, or 2 blocks long sometimes, and the tunnel's painted red and blue with white stars. There's no light, you know, you need a candle. And then you get to the burial chamber. And most of them have been robbed, of course, because, you know, there's gold there and such. But but they found, remember, King Tut. And King Tut's tomb found around 1920 by Carnarvon. And there was supposed to be a curse. I have actually had the privilege. I was inside King Tut's tomb. And I remember there was a woman there, and somebody said, this is a chance to go inside King Tut's tomb. And she starts to scream, no, there's a curse. And her husband or somebody was pulling her, and she was screaming, no, there's a curse, I'm not going in. And she ended up not going in. She ended up not going, whatever that. Anyway, King Tut's tomb is on the edge of the Valley of the Kings. It was because the shaft to that tomb was on the side of a door for another tomb that they just never found it. But they found it finally, and it was an unrobbed tomb. There may be some other tombs unrobbed, and of course they had gold, a golden casket, and gold is chemically inactive. So gold just stays shiny. It looked like it was brand new when you go. The mask of King Tut, which is in the Cairo Museum, looks brand new. Looks like they just made it yesterday, and yet it's from about 1400 BC. It's 3,400 or so years old. It looks brand new because the gold doesn't fade. And they were great. Look, they were great artisans. They made all these temples, these pillars. Magnificent civilization for about 3,000 years, and great artwork. They didn't have computers or anything like that, you know. Elephantine, down here there's a town called Elephantine. I guess that has some elephants there. And what they found at Elephantine was papyri. They found writings. Elephantine is an island in the Nile. It's about a block, maybe a half mile long, a couple 100 yards wide, but people live there. And after the Egyptians, Greeks moved in, and they did all kinds of writing, and they trashed most of their writing. And even though there's a water in the Nile, remember we're in the Sahara Desert, so it's dry, the air is dry. And the papyri has lasted for centuries. And around 1900, they started to dig up Elephantine and the papyri, and it's interesting because in the New Testament, there was about 50 words in the New Testament that no one had ever seen in the Greek world. Strange spell. In our New Testament, there were about 50 words, and people called it Holy Spirit. Nothing wrong, Holy Spirit Greek. And the translators kind of guessed from the sentence what the word meant, because no one had ever seen these words. But around 1900, see, way after the King James Version, but we see the guesses were pretty good in context. When they dug these up by a guy named Adolf Deisman and others, they found all the words that were never seen before. For one, Paul wrote that the Holy Spirit in you, you are sealed with the Spirit, which is, the Greek word is arabon, which is the arabon of your possession. And nobody had ever seen the word arabon anywhere in the world. Greece, Crete, you name it, Egypt, no one had ever seen it. But when they dug up in the Elephantine papyri, the word arabon was everywhere. It was a deposit. It means deposit. So it'd say, I, Schmetter, buy 2 cows from Shalom, and I give an arabon of 20 drachma. It was the word for deposits. And so Paul wrote that the Holy Spirit in you is God's deposit. The King James says earnest, because they used to call the word deposit earnest money. To prove that you were sincere or earnest, you'd give a certain money. We use the word deposit. Nobody, you're too young, nobody here has ever heard of earnest money. But elderly people didn't use the word deposit, they heard of earnest money. Did you hear of earnest? You're too young. Okay. Now, out here are the Colossi of Memnon, and I asked a question. We'll show you a picture in a second of the Colossi of Memnon, but they're 2 giant statues that weigh about 720 tons each. Boy, these guys really made statues. And these were interesting, the Colossi, 2 statues of Ramses, and they're far from the Nile. I guess he decided, I want to be out in the desert. But there's 2 giant statues, they're about 30 foot high, and about 15 foot wide each. They weigh 720 tons each, and it's Pharaoh sitting, and at his one ankle is his wife, and his other ankle is mom. So there it is. And they're called the Colossi. They're colossal. The Colossi of Memnon. His Egyptian name was Memnon. The Colossi of Memnon. I'll try to show you a picture. Now, this says First Cataract. And I just want to introduce you. Heard of the word. A cataract means an occlusion in the cornea. If you have cataracts. It's interesting. I was told I'm starting to get a cataract. You get older. About 20 years ago. But praise the Lord, it's not gotten anywhere. It doesn't bother me. But anyway, a cataract, when you went about 450 miles, about 650 miles down the Nile, and remember the water's floating this way. By the way, if you wanted to go north on the Nile, the current takes you, so you just sit in your boat and kind of steer. If you wanted to go south on the Nile, you had to put up a sail, because the winds were usually blowing south. So you went by sail or rowers. They had rowers and you'd row down the Nile. But anyway, a cataract is a break in the river. There are certain places, there are 6 cataracts. That's actually a test question. There are 6 cataracts where the river is stopped by big rocks, giant rocks. The water can still flow around the rocks, but a ship cannot go through. A boat cannot go through. Remember, on the top, it's about 2 miles wide. But anyway, there's rocks all across it, natural, not man-made, natural, and it's a break. And so what they'd have to do at the cataract, and that's where there usually would be cities and such, is you'd have to take your boat to one side, unload the ship. There are people there, that was their job. There are hundreds of people, they'd unload your ship for you, of course charge you some money. And then you'd have a ship on the other side of the cataracts. The cataracts weren't usually more than 50, 100 yards wide. And they just carry your stuff about 50, 100 yards and load it into the next ship. And then you'd go down to the next cataract. And there are 6 cataracts. So if you wanted to go all the way down to Khartoum, that meant your ship you actually had to use 6 different ships. Or if you had a little boat, they could pull the boat out of the water, unload it, pull it out of the water, carry it 100 yards, put it back in the water, reload it, and go down. But you'd have to there are 6 cataracts, breaks in there, and the first cataract would mark the ancient end of Egypt. And then you'd get to the Sudan, or in the ancient word Nubia. But cataracts are blockages of the Nile, 6 of them. And we get the word for a cataract in the eye from the Nile. The Nile didn't get it from our ophthalmologists. We get it. The cataract was break. So I don't know. Maybe the first guy said what's the problem? Cataract. And then it comes cataract. Okay, they're gold line. Next. Here, Now, and so they built a dam right here. Remember, the water's flowing this way, so that it's called the Aswan High Dam. It's one of the great dams of the world. Gives electric power to Cairo and all. And now here's Abu Simbel. We'll show you a picture of that soon. Here was gold mines. They had a lot of gold in Egypt. Here's the second cataract. Here's the third, the fourth, the fifth. You can see it in the model of the sixth. 6 cataracts and blockages. But Abu Simbel, here for Ramses II, he built 4 statues of himself. Giant ones. I mean, giant ones. Too big for anybody to steal. And he has 4 of himself sitting next to each other. So if you're thinking of making a statue, you know, they didn't have pictures. Everybody here takes pictures, selfies. In the old days, they didn't have oil painting. In the Middle Ages, they're doing oil paintings of the kings. Here, they built statues. They don't have oil paintings. What they do in the walls. But anyway, they built statues. And we're talking again, I keep saying it, but I want thousands of statues. Not hundreds, thousands of statues. And he built 4 giant ones, shoulder to shoulder. And they knew that when they built the dam, the water would go here. Nasser was the leader of Egypt for a while. And so it's called Lake Nasser. And it flooded Abu Simbel. So they cut his 4 statues in pieces, and they put it on higher ground. They put it about 100 feet above on the mountainside, and so people can still see it in Abu Simbel if you go down that far south. Okay, next. And here we are. This is Abu Simbel, and notice the 4. So the same pharaoh, 4 of him. And if you can see, here's wifey, and here's mom. See that? Here's wifey and mom. Wifey, mom. Wifey, mom. So any of you, if you're a male chauvinist, and you have your computer, you can make a picture of you for your Christmas picture. And how about having your wife at your angle, and mom at your other side? See the reaction. And again, please don't send me the email. Send it to Tommy.
Would be the last picture, right?
Yeah, that's right. They were trying. But I don't want to get an email. Dear Dr. Cohen, I was very disappointed. You seem to be in favor of the idea of making little wife and mom. No, you can make big wife if you want. Put little husband and little next. Here this shows it. Look how big. You see the people. Look at the people. You see the relative size. Here they've disassembled and they're reassembling on higher ground. And there's 4 of them. Okay, next. There's the Sphinx, and you can see the giant, one of the 3 giant pyramids. Sphinx is a lion with Pharaoh's head. There's a few sphinxes in Egypt. Next. Here you see, by the way, some of the art in the tunnels. And here's the Pharaoh talking to the falcon god. See, his head's that of a falcon. Next. Oh, go back 1 if you could. Thank you very much. He's holding the Ankh. The Ankh is a little circle with a piece down. That's the symbol of life. And usually it's the Coptic cross. Coptic means Egyptian, and the sign of the Christian church in Egypt for years, in fact since the time of Christ, was the Coptic cross. That it was the Egyptian Ankh. Looks like a jail key or something. It's a circle but with a cross below it. That's what the Egyptians used, and that's what the Christians said. It was the symbol of life, and so it became the symbol of the Coptic Christian church. Okay, next. Here's a picture of the drawing of the Alexandrian library made in ancient times. What we call the book. A book was not invented until about 300 AD. See, that's why we're not going to find any older complete Bibles before that time, because there was no such thing as a book. The early word for book is codex. There wasn't any such thing. Everything was a scroll. So wherever you see biblos or book in the Bible, it always means scroll. where they unrolled it on 2 sticks. And the Alexandrian Library had about 300,000 of those writings. Had a fire once, they lost some, and then a group about 400 AD, a group called the Vandals. Have you heard of the Vandals? The Vandals, we have an English word called vandalism. Vandalism means destruction without a purpose. We say somebody came into the room and broke the chairs, painted the walls, made holes in the walls. They're a vandalism. But that's because a tribe called the barbarians around 400 AD came to the Alexandria Library and they just burned it for fun and destroyed so much of the ancient knowledge. And next. Oh, here's the Colossi of Memnon. Remember I said it? And you get an idea. A person would just be about this high. A person would be about as big as his ear. So they weigh about 720 tons each. And they're one of the pharaohs. And this is not near the Nile. It's way out west. And they're just gigantic. I think, in fact, it stands on I think this is like 15 feet high itself. And so they're just colossal. They're giant, and they're out there, nowhere in the desert. Next. You see, look, this is a temple. This temple is 3,000 years old. So they had a great civilization. Next. This is a temple worshiping the falcon god. See, Romans 1 says, in their ignorance of rejecting the true God, they start to worship animals and such. So that's the falcon god. That's about 12 feet high or so. Next. Here's just pictures of all the big temples along the whole Nile. There are temples, statues. Okay, next. Hey, is this a big one? You remember in the book of Daniel, it says they built a statue of Nebuchadnezzar like 60 cubits high. You say, well, who could do that? Well, here's one in Egypt. And I remember being here, and I was looking up, and it's the guy's foot. And I'm looking up, and the statue, it was 90 feet long, and it must have fallen, or they never got it up. And I'm looking up, and it's his foot. And I'm looking at his big toe. It's just giant. So look at a big statue. Look, here's a person. Here's a person. You see they've got statues all around, but look at this pharaoh. My. So you see what a great thing God did when he brought him out. It was no easy thing. Next. You see more. This is in Luxor, and you see the giant statues of the pharaohs. You see helping the people. Here's an obelisk. Next. Remember we talked about the Sinai and the such? Okay, next. There's the 3 great pyramids. They thought they were once covered with limestone and whitish, but the people have taken them through the years for the building. And you can go into the pyramids. There's a little door, and you can go through the shaft up to the room where the pharaoh was buried. Wow. Now, they suspect that there may be hidden shafts where there's gold and such, but there's always people trying to x-ray, but they can't x-ray through the rocks. And there may be millions and millions of dollars of gold in there, but if you go there with a pickaxe, they're going to arrest you. But they're immense, and they're as tall as a 46-story building, and you can go into them. And there's a tunnel. I remember every time I've gone into them, there's just this little tunnel, and you have to walk up a ramp. Like 40 stories high, and as you're walking, there's always, honestly, whenever you go, there's always somebody screaming, "Let me out! Let me out! I can't take it anymore! Let me out!" And the guards and the police, okay, bring down some lady or man who's growing up, or, I can't do it. Okay. Next. Another Sphinx. And you see, by the way, the Egyptian Ankh, the sign of life. Next. Here's Luxor. Look at these giant pillars. Next. The Anubis, one of the gods, the anteater god. And here you can see the Ankh. And this became the symbol of the Christian church in Egypt. Next. Hathor, the god of fertility and such. Next. The falcon god, sun god. Next. Another falcon god. And that's Pharaoh's hat on him. And here you see Pharaoh's hat. And you see Pharaoh's wife. Pharaoh and his wife. Next. Here is artist reconstruction you see of Luxor and Karnak, Thebes. And you see it was just temple after temple. These are giant buildings, an obelisk and such. Next. Giants of the entrance rams, the entrance to one of the temples. Look at that. Wow. Next. Visitor. Next. Another sphinx with another pharaoh's head. Next. This is the queen playing a game. And here is a cartouche. You see, circle, spells her name. Next. Sobek, the alligator god. Sobek, the alligator god. Oh, with ears. Fine, they can put human ears on them. Next. This is Akhenaten. It could have been the pharaoh, the first pharaoh before Moses or after, because he changed the religion. He declared there's only one God. And so that may have been right after Moses or so, after Ramses was the pharaoh of the Exodus. But I just want to tell you something about Akhenaten. Lived about 1350 before Christ, who said there's only one God, but he tended to say it was the sun. I was in the Boy Scouts as a young guy, and there was a junior assistant scoutmaster named Seymour Schwartz. This is Seymour Schwartz. I'm telling you, it's just exactly like him. You know, and you think, how much do people change? If you saw Seymour today, you'd say, oh, they must have photoshopped that and made him. I'm telling you, this is Seymour Schwartz. The official name is Akhenaten, but it's like I know him well. Here's Nefertiti making an offering. Next. And by the way, here shows Tel el-Amarna, okay, one of the treasure cities with all the temples. Next. Entrance to the temple. Next. Here is the temple of Hatshepsut, which is between the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. And you get the idea, mountainous territory. This is an immense temple. This is an immense temple. It's not a little thing, it's an immense, large temple, like a huge building. And well, here are the people. Look, little people. Just barely see the people. And I had the pleasure of being here. And this temple is 3,400 years old. And it's in mint condition, except they did paintings on the sides, and the sun has faded the paintings. So it looks like it did in Moses' day, except the sun has faded the paintings. And in Egypt, there are great arguments whether they should repaint it. Some they're repainting because it's almost gone, fading from the sun. But others want to, not touch it. And so people argue. It's too far south for anybody to come spray paint their initials on it, unfortunately. But yes, our Lord Jesus said that of the Jerusalem temple, before his death, remember Jesus said, not one stone shall stand upon another. And at the time Jesus said that, there were at least 100 temples in the world. That is, in the African, European, Asian world. They'll talk about Japan or Korea, China. There were at least 100 temples, most of them in Egypt, but some in Persia and all. Except for the one in Philippi, where Paul went for the missionary journey, and one in Ephesus, and the one in Jerusalem. It's like 97 of the temples are still standing. So, somebody might say, oh, when Christ said, oh, this temple will be destroyed, they might say, well, so what? Anybody could look at any temple and say it'll be destroyed. But no, most temples aren't destroyed. And here is one of the hundreds in Egypt that is in mint condition today. This is not a drawing, this is a photograph of the temple. It's in mint perfect condition. Because why? It's not raining in Egypt. It's not raining in the Sahara. And so it's not freezing. So they don't have water that freezes and breaks things. The things just last and last and last. So when Jesus pointed at the great temple in Jerusalem and said, not one stone upon another, it's a remarkable prediction that God made come true. Next. The golden casket, that's how it looks. It's in the Cairo Museum, and inside is another casket. Inside of that casket's another casket, and then is the body. And you can actually see the bodies in a room of the pharaohs if you want. It's like an optional room to look. They don't look great, but boy, I thought about it. You can see their teeth. And so it's apparently if you brush your teeth, these teeth are like 3,000 years old. Gold, and why is it? And even gold leaves. They have wood covered with gold. Why is it? Again, gold is chemically inactive, and I don't know if I should say. I used to have gold bridges. Finally, the dentist said, Gary, get rid of temporary bridges, get real bridges. I didn't want to spend the money, but I spent the money, and so now I have nicer teeth. But years ago, I had gold bridges. And then when I got the better bridges, I took the 4 gold bridges with like a white tooth in between each with the gold handles. And I saw an ad in the paper that said, we buy gold. So I took the gold, I got about $300 for my gold bridges. Now, what did they do with that gold? They melt it down, and is anybody here wearing a gold wedding ring? You might be wearing. Can I need King Tut's tomb. Here, entering King Tut's tomb next. Discovering as they open the one casket, another inside it, gold next. It's about this big. It'd be worth, what would it be worth? It'd be worth $100 million. But look at the artwork, and we see the falcon of Upper Egypt, the cobra of Lower Egypt, meaning he's head of the 2 Egypts. Mitzrayim, means plural, Okay, next. Next. Here's the Valley of the Kings. Next. Next. Rosetta Stone. Next. That's it. Okay, that's all for that. Okay. We're going to jump to, as we have to, Paul's missionary journey, number 7, if we could. Okay. I'm just going to briefly talk about Paul's missionary journeys, and we're not going to memorize all the cities, but Paul started out in Acts chapter 13. The Bible says in Acts 13 that God's Spirit said, set me aside Paul and Barnabas for the work to which I will call them. And so God's Spirit led Paul and Barnabas, his name was Saul still at that time, and they were in Antioch. They were in the church of Antioch. Please notice now there are 2 Antiochs. Notice, there are 2 Antiochs. So this is the Antioch that Paul, we could say his home church. Paul's home church was in Antioch in Syria, it was called then, or called Antioch on the Orontes River. Antioch in Syria. Then it was Syria. Syria sometimes was the word they used for the whole Middle East. Today we just use it for that one country north of Israel. But it was Antioch in Syria. And now on his first missionary journey, he goes up here, and this city up here is Antioch. This is Antioch in Pisidia, or in the middle of, in Eastern Asia, but in what we call today Turkey. But notice that makes sometimes people confused. There's the Antioch here. So Paul, in the first missionary journey, went from Antioch to Antioch and back to Antioch. Got that? But Antioch, that's not hard to remember. From Antioch to Antioch and back to Antioch. But that was the name. Antioch is the name for one of the Greek Syrian kings, was called Antiochus. His name was Antiochus. So he started a couple cities, and he named it after himself. I'm Antiochus. He could have called it Antiochus, Antipopulus, but he called it Antioch. So anyway, Paul starts his missionary journeys from Antioch. And the first one, he went with Barnabas, and Barnabas, his hometown, Barnabas came from Cyprus. Cyprus is that island that near Israel. Remember yesterday we said it's about how many miles from tip to bottom? Yeah, 150. And it points to the corner. And so, since Barnabas came from Cyprus, their first missionary journey, they went through Cyprus. And when they came to the western end of Cyprus, to a city called Paphos, it said there was a big argument and trouble, and Paul was hauled before the head of the city, that we call it the mayor, the magistrate for Rome, and his name was Sergius Paulus. His name was Paul. And after Paul meets Sergius Paulus, forever after, he's called Paul, or Paulos. He's called Paul. My guess, I wasn't there. My guess is, Paulos said, hey, and he apparently accepted the faith or so. But he apparently said to Paul, hey, you want to go through, you say you're going to go into these regions, Pamphylia and Lacedonia, and you want to preach whatever you're preaching. If you're a Roman citizen with a Roman name, you're going to get through easy. Take my name. But if you use your Saul and your Jewish name, you may not be allowed to get off the boat. So they don't like strangers, but they like Romans. Everything was run by Rome at the time. This